Are we looking at the traces of a forgotten episode in human history? I think so. I think that's what's going on here.
Would it be fair to say that there's an element of a rediscovery of a
Yes.
lost technology from the past?
I think it would be fair to say that, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the Great Pyramid of Giza is probably the most stunning of all these ancient structures. And the stones are immense, and some of them were cut from a quarry that's hundreds of miles away. How do you think they did that?
Well, some of them, the granite in the Great Pyramid comes from more than 500 miles to the south. If you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof are, the ceiling of the King's Chamber are all made with gigantic granite blocks.
Stunning detail.
Stunning detail. Those blocks on the roof of the King's Chamber weigh 70 tons each. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, they could move heavy blocks because they put them on wet sand and they push them along on wet sand. Well, maybe if you're just at ground level, that will do. But when you're 350 feet above the ground, as you are in the King's Chamber, that won't do at all. I don't know how they did it. All I know is they did it. I don't think anybody knows how they did it, how they lifted those stones, how they brought them up to that level. I think we're looking, again, at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that from the human memory banks almost completely. Not entirely completely because there were survivors, but removed most of it. Randall will tell you, sea level rise, it creates a powerful high energy zone. Mm-hmm. Anything that was existing on those flooded coastlines has just been pounded to hell. I mean, talk about it, Randall.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot more energetic than now. I mean, imagine your sea level rising at 3 or 4 times at least faster than we've seen rise in the last century. And within there, juxtaposed are these episodes of very rapid sea level rise. So you're talking about a very energetic intertidal zone. And anything that's there, short of large megalithic blocks, is going to be utterly obliterated by the time the process is through. And I think that this is one of the things that the archaeologists and the prehistorians, people are looking at that, have failed to take into account the severity of these events we're talking about. Because the question always is, where are the artifacts? Where's the pottery? Where is the evidence that this civilization existed? And I have 2 responses to that. One, you don't realize the extent of the total remodeling of this planetary surface that took place. Because I mean, we could get into some of the stuff here. I have tons of images where I think maybe we'll get a chance to pull up a couple of really awesome drone footage here before we're done. But once you begin to wrap your head around this, you go, really? It's like, imagine that you drop an atomic bomb on a city and it completely obliterates it. And then a short while later, you drop another one on the same place. What's going to be left? And then 10,000 years, 20,000 years goes by. What are you going to find? What are you going to look for? It's going to be just rubble that gets reincorporated just into the geological stratum, and it's going to be very difficult to differentiate, for example, from what's called a conglomeratic rock, which is basically we have just a huge jumble of broken rock cemented together. Right? Now, within there could be all kinds of stuff that's not even recognized as being artificial in the sense that humans had anything to do with it. The other thing is when we talk about these ancient technologies, if we're only looking for a mere reflection of ourselves, we could overlook it completely because I think there's evidence that exists now. I mean, some modern researchers whose work has been buried or suppressed, I think we're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors were up to. And maybe this would be worth a whole show in itself. We could dive into this, and I don't want to get into that today.
But what kind of technologies are you talking about?
Well, I shouldn't really get into that.
Get into it.
Get into
Come
it,
on.
Randall.
We got to get into it.
Okay, well.
We've opened the door, sir.
Okay. Well, okay.
The passing of the HDMI cable.
The passing
a sacred moment.
Well, there are people out there now who have been working on trying to rediscover that. And again, I don't want to digress too much into this now because I would really rather be able to give a whole treatment of it, and it might kind of derail us a little bit from this. But there are people who've been working on these things for decades now, basically in secret. And I've had the privilege of talking to some of these people over the last 6 or 7 years. And right now, as we're speaking, there's a group of people who are basically going to open source a whole lot of stuff in the next 3 months, so it can never get suppressed again. And that's why I'd like to come back and talk in more detail.
Well, I'd love to have you come back and talk about it, but we got to talk about it a little bit now.
Okay. Well, there's a laboratory right now in the Maldives that's been building prototypes using these technological principles, which are based on implosion rather than explosion. And the inspiration for this...
Tesla's ideas are part of it, I think you mentioned.
Tesla's ideas are very much a part of it. Yes, Tesla's ideas are very much a part of it. So is, I don't know if you ever, Victor Schauberger, who did the work with water and discovered, look at, Jamie, could you look up Victor? Oh, I have the cable now, don't I?
Take it back. Let me find a video.
Well, no. Let me pull something up here, and
I think the key thing is we're looking at technologies that are not the same as ours.
Yes.
And that's partly why archaeologists can't see them, because they're looking for us in the past, and they're not open to the possibility that there are whole other kinds of technology that could be used.
Right.
I always go back to the ancient Egyptian traditions that speak of priests chanting as these huge blocks were lifted into the air. Were they using some kind of sound effect, some kind of use of sound that was able to manipulate matter? We know that sound can manipulate matter, as a matter of fact, but they're lifting these blocks. Again and again, it appears in ancient Egyptian traditions. The notion that we could lift huge blocks with sound seems absurd to archaeologists, and yet it's there in the traditions of the Egyptologists. And what Randall's talking about now is people who are working on a whole alternative path of technology, and maybe that's a rediscovery of the kind of technologies that were used by a lost civilization.
I think that's what's important about what you're saying, is that we have this very limited idea of technology based on what we've experienced.
Yeah.
But if you had anatomically similar human beings that lived for thousands and thousands of years.
Stuff just keeps on getting older.
If you think about the amount of progress that we've achieved as modern humans just in the last few hundred years, if you go back 400 years to now, it's a stunning amount of achievement.
Absolutely stunning.
And if you have a completely different path of technology, one that's not utilizing internal combustion engines and cranes and the like that we experience
leverage,
today.
Mechanical advantage, everything that our tech is based around.
Something that's insanely advanced, tens of thousands of years of a different path.
Yeah.
And that may be what we're looking at.
And that may begin to explain these otherwise inexplicable monuments that have survived.
Jamie, do I need... There we go. This is the work of Nikola Tesla. And he was... Again, this is way too much for us to get in today. That's why we need to devote a whole session to talking about this.
Okay.
But this is... this was the inspiration. You know, his work was suppressed. A lot of his patents were taken, sealed up by the U.S. government for whatever reason. I don't know. But this is some of the stuff that's now being developed using his ideas, plus some of the others. This is the man I've been talking to for the last 7 years.
Malcolm Bendall?
Yes. And again, I don't want to get into it today, but here's an example of what they're doing. This is a generator that has no moving parts. It's all based on geometry, pure geometry. Mm-hmm. And here's the basic idea, as I think I understand it at this point. Resonance frequencies. Everything vibrates. Have you ever, if we had an electric razor, we plugged it in, turned it on, set it on this table, bzz, it's going to move around, isn't it? You ever seen that?
Yeah.
That's the beginning of the concept, because it's vibrating. Everything vibrates at a frequency, and if you know that frequency, you can control things. And I think that's the basic idea of what we're looking at here. And it's all based upon the ancient numbers. And they're developing technologies right now, and they have been. I was recently contacted and given the go-ahead that I could talk. I've been sitting on this for 7 years without talking about it because they asked me not to talk about it until they had their patents in place and their licensing. That's all happened since last summer. So we're now free to talk about it. So that's what I'm saying. I think it would be a good idea to get me back on here. We can look at it. I'm going to lay this on Graham so he can look at it too, because I really want to get Graham's feedback on this.
I mean, would it be fair to say that there's an element of a rediscovery of a
Yes.
lost technology from the past?
I think it would be fair to say that, yes.
And so through this technology, they're able to move stones or cut stones or all the above?
All the above.
And even transport them? Whoa,
Yes.
what is all this?
Well, this is the model, and this is diagramming all the frequencies of the elements and what their vibrational frequencies are and the numbers that measure those frequencies. And they're all the numbers we get from looking at these ancient traditions that recur over and over and over again, that I've been talking about in my sacred geometry classes for decades without knowing what the final result was going to be. So this inventor who's working with this small group contacted me, and this is what he told me. He said, you built the foundation. He said, you laid the foundation with your work on ancient geometry, and I built a house on top of it. That's what he said.
Nice.
So for 7 years, he's been supplying me with all the information. I have copies of all the patents. I have videos of the testing of the prototypes. And Mazda, the car manufacturer in Japan, is getting ready to do a $25 million testing of some of these prototypes that they believe they can retrofit internal combustion engines with. And there's over 100, they've developed over 100 patents on some of this stuff. And it's amazing.
And what would be the fuel?
Well, plasmoids. Plasmoids, as it says here, are donut or toroidal-shaped clusters of net protons or net electrons that once captured and placed into a toroidal orbit are capable of absorbing, storing, and releasing enormous amounts of energy within their self-generated and structured electromagnetic containment field. Plasmoids, in effect, function as an atomic battery that can be self-charging due to its ability to convert matter to available clean energy. So it's a lot to get into, and I think it would take us kind of off what we're here to talk about
But
today.
At least what's promising is that there is some, at least, research or understanding.
And it's actually quite mature at this point. And in order to avoid the kinds of fate that befell Tesla and Reich, Robert Oppenheimer, Victor Schauberger, and so many others that were working in these fields, all kind of converging on this same insight. It's been conducted in secret. The laboratory that they've been developing this is in the Maldives, so that it's been immune from government interference. And now I think it's about ready to go to the next.
Now, what is the motivation of the suppressing of this information?
I think in case of Tesla, wasn't it military, the fear of military applications?
I also think that, there are huge corporations that have very large investments in a particular path of technology, which is ours.
Right.
And for somebody to come up with a whole new path of technology, it's very threatening to them. And much better from their point of view to suppress it, or if they can't suppress it, to kind of buy it and hide it, and keep things on the track that they're on now. I would say that's the motive.
And maybe for people that are curious about this and maybe even skeptical, consider the massive change that nuclear power provided us. Whereas before the 1940s, this was unheard of.
Yeah.
This even the concept of it. And all of a sudden now we have nuclear power, nuclear weapons, the most profound power known to man currently.
God help us, it's a power for use by adults, but unfortunately it's delinquent children who are leading our world right now. The leaders of our planet, the politicians out there, they're just complete arseholes. I can't think of any of them who I feel any respect for whatsoever. And it's they who are in charge of this frightening, terrifying technology.
Have you ever wondered about the legend of King Gilgamesh and the ancient city he ruled? Let's dive into a time machine and head back to around 2700 BCE, right into the heart of Mesopotamian civilization, during what scholars call the early dynastic period.
I would prefer to propose, and I have proposed, that what we're looking at is evidence of some kind of transfer of technology, that people came into that area who had other knowledge.
This was an era when city-states were popping up all over Mesopotamia, marking some of the earliest complex societies in human history. And right there, in the thick of it, was Gilgamesh, a name that echoes through history not just as a king but as a figure of myth and epic tales. Gilgamesh's realm was none other than Uruk, a jewel among the Sumerian city-states, nestled in the fertile lands along the Euphrates River, in what we now know as modern-day Iraq.
This is a very neglected area of the world, as far as deep and ancient archaeology goes.
Picture this, a bustling urban centre alive with the hum of marketplaces, the grandeur of massive temple complexes, and the imposing presence of the legendary Uruk wall, said to be built by Gilgamesh himself.
It's interesting that the patterns are geometrical. Someone made it,
Yeah.
and it involved a very large amount of organized labor in order to make it. There had to be the will and the intent in order to do that.
Uruk wasn't just any city. It was a beacon of culture, economy, and innovation, credited with many firsts in human civilization, including the invention of cuneiform writing. But what was life like under King Gilgamesh's rule? Imagine a leader who was more than just a man. He was a figure of divine significance, believed to be responsible for the welfare and prosperity of his people. Under his leadership, Uruk flourished, becoming a center for religious devotion, particularly for the worship of Inanna, a major deity in the Sumerian pantheon. Gilgamesh's Uruk was a city that represented the zenith of Sumerian engineering, architecture, and social organization, boasting a population that highlighted its status as one of the world's largest cities at the time. During his reign, Gilgamesh would have been the linchpin in the city's governance, overseeing administrative decisions, religious practices, and military campaigns to safeguard Uruk's interests. His leadership likely saw the construction of monumental projects that not only enhanced the city's splendor, but also its defenses, ensuring Uruk's prominence in the annals of ancient history. If we're only looking for a mirror reflection of ourselves, we could overlook it completely. I think we're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors were up to. Diving into the sands of time, the figure of King Gilgamesh stands as a fascinating blend of myth and reality, a character who has intrigued historians and archaeologists alike. While the line between the legendary and the historical is often blurred, there's a handful of archaeological breadcrumbs that lead us back to the possibility of Gilgamesh's actual existence in ancient Mesopotamian civilizations. First off, let's talk about the Sumerian king list. This isn't your average historical document. It's more like a mashup of history and mythology, listing rulers of Sumer and their reign lengths. What's cool about this list is that our guy Gilgamesh makes an appearance. His name popping up among other rulers gives us a hint that maybe, just maybe, he was a real figure who ruled, and wasn't just a character in ancient bedtime stories. The fact that there are several versions of this list, found in different places and from various times, shows that keeping track of their leaders was pretty important to the Sumerians, and that Gilgamesh was a significant part of that record. Then there are the inscriptions and artifacts. Imagine finding a tablet or a cylinder seal with Gilgamesh's name carved into it. These bits and pieces don't give us the full picture of his reign, but do suggest he was recognized as a king. These items, scattered across ancient Sumerian sites like breadcrumbs, hint at the long-lasting memory of Gilgamesh, underlining his status not just as a myth but as a cultural icon. But here's where it gets tricky. Trying to separate the man from the myth in Gilgamesh's story is like trying to untangle a finely knotted rope. The archaeological evidence we have doesn't lay out his life story or list his achievements in detail. Instead, it teases us with glimpses, leaving us wondering about the reality of his reign. This scarcity of clear-cut historical records makes Gilgamesh an enigmatic figure, shrouded in the mists of time. Despite these challenges, the evidence we do have is precious. It bridges the gap between legend and history, suggesting that Gilgamesh might have been more than just a character in an epic tale. Diving into the ancient world, let's explore one of the oldest stories ever told, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Picture this: clay tablets, etched with cuneiform, the very first writing system cooked up by the ingenious Sumerians. This epic isn't just a tale, it's a journey back to the 3rd dynasty of Ur, around 2120 BCE, though its roots stretch back even further through earlier Sumerian poems about our hero Gilgamesh. The story of Gilgamesh came to light in the modern era thanks to 19th century archaeologists rummaging through the ruins of Nineveh's library. Imagine piecing together a jigsaw puzzle of ancient clay fragments, each piece a window into the epic's soul-stirring narrative. Sure, some parts are missing, lost to time, but what remains is a testament to human creativity and spirit. Now onto Gilgamesh himself. This guy was not your average ancient king. Described as 2/3 god and 1/3 human, he was a force to be reckoned with. His divine lineage gave him superhuman strength and courage, setting him leagues apart from mere mortals and even other mythical heroes. The epic's narrative is a roller coaster of adventures and quests, showcasing Gilgamesh's thirst for glory and eternal fame. Take his trek to the cedar forest to defeat Humbaba, for example. It's the stuff of legends, a clear display of his heroism. Yet, it's the death of his friend Enkidu that turns his world upside down, launching him on a quest for immortality and leading him to confront the harsh truth of human mortality. Speaking of Enkidu, his friendship with Gilgamesh is nothing short of transformative. Enkidu, created by the gods from the wild to temper Gilgamesh's arrogance, ends up becoming his soulmate. Their bond is a powerful narrative force, illustrating how deep connections can foster personal growth and lead to profound realizations about life and oneself. At its core, the Epic of Gilgamesh is rich with themes that resonate deeply with the human experience. It's a tale of the relentless search for fame and the universal quest for immortality, only to find that death is an inescapable part of life. The story underscores the importance of friendship and how it shapes our journey towards understanding and accepting our humanity. In the whirlwind adventure that is the Epic of Gilgamesh, we're treated to some of the most captivating encounters between a mortal and the divine you'll find anywhere in ancient literature. Gilgamesh's quest is not just a tale of heroism and the search for eternal life. It's a deep dive into the complex dance between gods and humans in Mesopotamian culture. Take, for instance, Gilgamesh's meeting with Utnapishtim, the ancient world's version of Noah. Imagine sitting down with someone who survived a world-ending flood, all because a god gave him the heads-up to build a boat. This isn't just an incredible survival story, it's a pivotal moment for Gilgamesh. He's on a quest for immortality, and here's Utnapishtim, living proof that the gods can grant such a wish. The story of the Great Flood, where the gods decide to reboot humanity but spare Utnapishtim, mirrors the power the Anunnaki wield in Mesopotamian myths, making life and death decisions over humanity's fate. Gilgamesh's journey is peppered with divine interactions that really make you think about the ancient Mesopotamian view of the cosmos. There's Enkidu, Gilgamesh's partner in crime, who was literally made by a goddess because the gods felt Gilgamesh needed to tone it down a bit. Then there's Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, who doesn't take rejection well. After Gilgamesh turns her down, she sends a celestial bull to Rakshop as payback. And let's not forget about Humbaba, the fearsome guardian of the cedar forest, appointed by the god Enlil. Gilgamesh and Enkidu's battle with Humbaba isn't just an epic fight scene. It's a narrative about human ambition clashing with divine intent. Throughout his quests, Gilgamesh keeps in touch with the sun god Shamash, who's like a divine mentor, offering guidance and support. It's fascinating to see this godly figure taking an active interest in Gilgamesh's endeavors. Even Gilgamesh's mom, Ninsin, gets in on the divine action. Though she's more of a minor goddess, her interventions on her son's behalf highlight the intimate relationship between the gods and Gilgamesh, blurring the lines between the celestial and the terrestrial. Heading back into mesmerizing world of ancient Mesopotamia, and you'll encounter the Anunnaki, a group of deities whose stories weave through the heart of Sumerian and Akkadian mythology. These mythologies, among the oldest in human history, share a fascinating pantheon of gods, with the Anunnaki holding a special place. Interestingly, over time, some Anunnaki began to be associated with celestial bodies. This transition highlights their growing significance in Mesopotamian astrology and cosmology, where the movements of stars and planets were seen as divine messages. The identification of certain Anunnaki with the sun, moon, and Venus, for example, lent these celestial bodies a sacred significance, connecting the dots between the heavens and the divine drama of the gods.